Thank you for the introduction. I'm the Horticultural Engagement Officer here at RHS Garden Wisley. We're in Surrey near Woking, one of 5 gardens that the RHS has. And I'm part of a project called New Shoots, which is all about getting information out there about careers in horticulture, and particularly giving information about what horticulture includes, which may be slightly different or a little bit extra than what people might immediately think, particularly if they come and visit one of our gardens. So in terms of things that I'm going to go through today, for those who don't know what the Royal Horticultural Society or the RHS is, I'll give you a quick introduction and talk a little bit about some of the roles that we have within this organisation. I'll talk a little bit about kind of horticulture more generally and about the industry. And then I've got 3 what I call sort of spotlights on sort of specific roles. So, the Royal Horticultural Society, we're very, very old as an organisation, not the people within it. We were founded in 1804 as the Horticultural Society by 7 individuals, some of whom were kind of gardeners for the royal family, others who were just sort of really interested in kind of collecting plants and understanding and botanizing and creating a bit of a scientific community around that. So we've been going a long time and developed quite substantially. Our purpose is to inspire passion and excellence in the science, art and practice of horticulture, and really important 3 words in there. So science, so we do horticultural science here at Wisley. We believe that horticulture is and can be an art form, whether that's through people who do botanical illustrations or people who design gardens and kind of weave plants together to create, living pictures. And there's obviously the practice. You can't have any of that without actually engaging in the practice of horticulture. So we want to inspire people all around those themes in horticulture. And we have a vision that sort of links to that, which is about enriching everyone's life through plants and making the UK a greener and more beautiful place. Quite important at the moment. You may have seen things in the news about the UK suffering a biodiversity crisis. So actually gardens make up a substantial proportion, more than all of our national parks combined. Our gardens combined are a huge space where actually we can make a real difference to plants and biodiversity that goes along with them. In terms of practically kind of what the Royal Horticultural Society includes, we've got 5 gardens. So I'm based here at Wisley, which is our oldest garden, founded in 1904. It was previously a garden of someone who was a member of the then RHS. And then in the kind of late 80s, we started being donated other gardens. So Rosemore in Devon came first, then we had Hyde Hall, and then Harlow Carr was part of what was then the Northern Horticultural Society, who decided to merge with us. And then Bridgewater very recently opened in 2001, and actually that's very different because that was the Royal Horticultural Society purchasing some land, which it used to be many years ago at the former estates, had fallen into ruin, and we purchased that land and specifically designed and developed a garden from scratch to increase our presence in the north of England. You also, some of you who, if you haven't heard of the RHS, you may have heard of the Chelsea Flower Show. It's probably one of our kind of most well-known outlets. That's coming up very shortly in May next month. And that's been going for over 100 years. And we also have Hampton Court Garden Festival, and also up in the north of the country near Bridgewater, we also have Tasson Park Flower Show as well. And we have about 1,200 members of staff across those 5 sites, our head office, our publishing office in Peterborough as well that we have. And those roles are in a huge range of different horticultural jobs or related professions. Across the RHS, we have a huge range of roles. The greatest variety of those are here at Wisley in Surrey. So we've got science that includes professions such as entomology, so the study of bugs, insects, biodiversity, the kind of very small scale. They also track, for example, new pests that kind of come into the country. So things like fuchsia gall mite, which appeared a few years ago in the southeast and London. We're mapping how that's spreading around the UK. We've obviously got horticulturists, or hopefully, obviously. So here at Wisley, we've got just over 100 members of the team who actually out there every day, except Christmas Day of the year, actually tending to maintaining, developing and creating spaces within the garden. And as part of that team, there's a bit of a sub-team, our arboriculturists, and they're a bit of a specialised sort of sub-function within our horticultural team. They're the ones that you might see wielding chainsaws and up in trees and harnesses and hard hats, kind of swinging around safely to kind of manage our trees collection here and at our other sites as well. We've got our shows and events I've sort of talked a little bit briefly about, but we also have scientists in plant health. So again, working closely with the entomology team, for example. Often insects can be kind of vectors for diseases and viruses, but also looking at kind of viruses and fungus. So we've got a lady called Dr. Jackie Draculic, who is currently studying the impacts of fungi, and sometimes we think about fungi as being detrimental to plant health, and actually she's doing a huge piece of work at the moment looking to see if we can use fungi to actually battle pests and diseases within our plant functions naturally, rather than kind of resorting to chemicals, which links then to our environmental horticultural science, which we do a lot of here at Wisley, which really links into our sustainability strategy and that whole kind of piece around how we create and maintain and help people have beautiful, productive and great garden spaces, but are also sustainable and kind of net positive for our environment, but also for people and for biodiversity. And then we've got lots of other things on site. So we've got retail, we've got visitor services. As much as we are a horticultural establishment, we are a huge visitor attraction. Here at Wisley, we welcome about 1.5 million to 2 million visitors a year, which includes members and people coming for the first time. And Bridgewater is very close to that, actually, in Manchester. But we've also, behind the scenes, behind all of this, we've got marketing, finance, people resources, all sorts of related functions, just like any other business that kind of keeps an organisation running and successful. So that's the Royal Horticultural Society. We are very much focused on what we call ornamental horticulture, although we do grow food here at Wisley, and we use that in our kind of catering outlets and staff, feeding staff. But there is a wider range of jobs within the industry which may be ornamental, but also maybe what we call productive horticulture, which is much more focused on growing and developing food. As an industry, horticulture across ornamental and productive contributes just over £24 billion to the UK economy every year. That's actually about double, approximately, the car industry. So, we probably slightly less visible in some ways, because most people either drive or are passengers in cars. You see cars all the time, but actually we are much contributing a lot more to the economy. When you put together all our agriculture, our formal ornamental horticulture, whether that's public gardens, whether that's kind of work that your local council does to kind of maintain green spaces, actually there's a huge amount of money that we put back into the economy. And formally employed within horticulture, we have around about 400,000 people, and that's a building and growing industry as well. So some of the roles that are on here are roles that I've sort of talked about that we have here at the RHS, but some things we don't sort of formally do. So we get in extra resource sometimes. Garden designers help us design aspects of our gardens. But there are lots of people out there who work for themselves, are self-employed, and they design gardens, or they might help people, private clients or public clients, maintain those. And actually, if you, we don't call them a head gardener here, we have a curator, but lots of big formal gardens will have a head gardener, and they will be, people who have in some cases spent many years honing their craft, but actually we're seeing a lot more younger head gardeners kind of emerge kind of more recently. As I talked about a little bit within the RHS, we do lots of science. That includes botanists. So in the UK, we, for example, are the kind of holders, if you like, of the nomenclature around narcissus or daffodils. So if anyone around the world breeds a new cultivar of a daffodil, they have to register it with the UK, and actually it's the RHS here at Wisley. So botanists are involved in that work about exploring plants, making sure that when people create new plants that they are actually truly new plants and that they can be then commercially sold under a kind of protected name. So there's a real kind of crossover between science and commercial within the industry. But we also have people doing much more artistic stuff. So we have botanical artists. We have some that we occasionally work with, either through our publishing or within our herbarium. Places like Kew Gardens, similarly, will have kind of botanical artists that will get to do, watercolors or paintings or photography of, specimens that they hold, whether that's their seed collection or herbarium. And actually, again, it's another thing that people can do, both working for an organisation, but also freelance working for themselves. If you want the big money, then sports turf management tends to be, not exclusively, but tends to be often where there's kind of quite a lot of money in horticulture. It's very niche, it's very specialised. If you are absolutely fascinated by the perfect lawn and you get to be the head lawn keeper at your favourite football or football club or Wimbledon tennis, for example, then actually they are very specialised and quite intense kind of roles that are horticulture just as much as kind of more public gardens. There's also lots of rights and notices out there. If you go into any kind of bookstore, it's probably mainly Waterstones these days. There's a huge wealth of publishing that still goes on around horticulture, whether that's to the kind of domestic market or whether that's more kind of formal academic publishing. And it's really moving into digital as well. We're getting a lot of people moving into the space through social media, doing kind of much more digital writing and editing, and starting to kind of pull together a lot of that kind of really great stuff that's happening online. And then you've got the kind of really specialist, kind of practical, hands-on horticultural roles in the industry, and those are people, foresters who look after our kind of native UK woodlands, and our arboriculturists who will support those, but might also do kind of private work or work in places like the RHS or the local councils. And then we also have nursery technicians. So you might have been to a nursery, so you might be go to a small nursery that sells herbaceous plants, perennials. They might be a sort of little independent place. But we also in the UK have lots of nurseries that are really vast, sizes of football pitches, sowing seeds, taking cuttings, producing lots of new plants for lots of various industries. And some of those are very specialised, and some of those are much more kind of general. And those are really getting some really kind of specific kind of techniques around propagating. So as an industry, we are quite a huge industry, and in terms of kind of a rough idea of what kind of salaries are out there in the industry, if you join as an apprentice at the RHS, for example, you would be on around about £20,000. But you go all the way through to team leaders and garden managers, and you start looking at kind of £45,000 plus. And if you get to places, things like curator, head gardener levels, that kind of goes even further than that. And then science is a sort of similar, kind of around about 21,000 to about 55,000 typically for kind of general science roles. But as you become more specialist, as you become more senior, obviously there are roles beyond that potentially even kind of command higher salaries as well. There's a really vast range. Just to give you a few sort of very specific examples of kind of roles. So Emily, who is one of our, we call professional work placement horticulturists, So she's here with us at Wisley, spending 2 years really specifically developing a skill within a certain area of the garden. She is incredibly talented. So Emily is the very smiley, she's just like that in real life as well. It's a shame she's not here to show you. Individual on the right of the slide. Here is part of the garden here at RHS Wisley, and it's a really good opportunity to show some of the work that Emily does. So Emily specialises in creating living sculptures out of willow. So we grow these have just been cut down actually in the last week or so. They're sort of bare stumps, but over the year they will grow these really long whippy stems. And Emily has created here at Wisley for the first time these really unique kind of willow sculptures. So again, it's that blending of under the practice and the art of horticulture. Emily actually was an apprentice at our garden Hyde Hall for a couple of years before she came over here to be a professional work placement within our herbaceous team. Before that, Emily spent a couple of years working for F&F Clothing. She kind of wasn't quite sure what she wanted to do when she left school, so she had an interest in fashion, and she went off to do fashion design at London Fashion College. But she knew, you know, kind of about a year into working for F&F that it kind of wasn't really where she wanted to be forever. And she sort of stumbled across the opportunity for an RHS apprenticeship, and she sort of knew that actually she really wanted to be outdoors, but also have something where she could use her kind of skills in kind of being artistic and creative, like she had been in the fashion industry. So Emily joined us 3 years ago now, and Emily is also staying with us for another year with professional placement. We are about to undergo a big project here with a Dutch designer called Pierre Udolf, who is quite influential amongst the plant design world. Emily is going to be the kind of project manager for that kind of redevelopment of one of the areas of our garden. So it's a way for Emily to kind of get, again, a bit more really specific experience in an area of our garden. Emily appeared in some photos on the front cover of the Guardian and within the Times as well, showing off our amazing display at the moment of tulips, which the team that Emily is in have kind of put in last autumn. So just to give you something slightly different, we have, I talked about we have sort of scientists and a science function here at Wisley. Another of my colleagues, Gemma Golding, is one of our senior ecologists. So Gemma joined us from a building developing company. Gemma kind of has always been, you know, interested in the outside, and so she got into doing ecology for kind of private companies, but quite often that was you know, very pressured environment, and quite often a place where perhaps they didn't have she wasn't seeing the biodiversity that she was sort of most interested in kind of witnessing and being able to study. So Gemma joined us here at the RHS a couple of years ago, and we aim to become biodiversity positive by 2025, and Gemma is really spearheading that piece of work which fits within our sustainability strategy. So as part of that, Gemma conducts formal surveys of our gardens. So just last week she was out surveying badger sets. She also spent an early evening torching newts, which sounds a bit like it uses a flamethrower, but it's a light torch. Going out and understanding how many newts we have on site, and newts are a protected species. So it's important for us to understand how many we have. And she's also doing a lot of work at the moment understanding how many bats we have kind of roosting around the site. And bats, again, are a really important part of our biodiversity here at Wisley. So we're trying to do lots of things to increase that biodiversity and make gardens here a really positive space for them, which actually has benefits in return for us and the way we grow our plants. And Gemma's really kind of key to that. Alongside that, Gemma has a huge role in kind of engaging our members and the wider public and understanding kind of what they can do for biodiversity in their own homes and how they can report their own wildlife sightings, whether that's here when they're visiting our gardens or in their own homes. So she creates a lot of content. She writes articles that go onto our website, and talks a lot about kind of tips and tricks that our kind of members and visitors can use to increase their own biodiversity at home. Gemma did went to university, got a degree, and she actually specialised in biodiversity and ecology, and did a master's. And so she really kind of knew early on that this was the space she wanted to be in, and found the place for her to kind of really kind of get into that. So as a final kind of insight into some of the roles that are available in the industry, have hopefully a video that will work from a chap called, I think it's Jake, he'll tell you. He works for a company called Fargrow. Fargrow are a horticultural supplies company. They're quite a big company based in the southeast, and they supply a lot of products to the horticulture industry, not just places like the RHS, but more commercial organisations, both ornamental and kind of productive horticulture. And they need to continue to develop new products and products that are compliant with the industry, and also are offering what the industry needs.
Hi, my name is Ant Surridge. I'm a plant research and development manager at Fargrow. Fargrow are a horticultural distributor down on the south coast, and my role specifically is in research and trialling our national exclusive products. So that's trials to produce GDP data for government approvals, as well as trials to improve grower confidence and our understanding to ensure that everyone out in the field is getting the best possible results from our products. So one of the great things about my career in horticulture in general is there's no such thing as an average day. Our portfolio of products is very wide, so I'm in and out of different crops, looking at different pest and disease issues. It's great because it means in the morning when you wake up, you're never entirely sure what the day's going to bring. Keeps it exciting, keeps you on edge, which is something I really enjoy. In terms of what I did before getting this career, I grew up on a ornamental plant nursery. So I grew up from there and then went to study plant science at the University of Worcester. It was great having the combination of the two because it gave me an understanding of both points of view of a very sort of technical, fundamental science understanding from my degree, but also an understanding of the commercials and the on-the-ground wants and needs of a grower. And I think it's been really beneficial to have both of those understandings. It means I can play them off against each other and understand what's going to make both parties happy. So one of the best things about this particular role is seeing the full product cycle. So going from having quite a basic concept of an idea with a manufacturer, taking it through all the process of regulations and development, bringing it into the UK market, and ultimately seeing UK growers benefit from the new technologies and innovation. It's great to play even a small part in the product development life cycle and be playing a part in keeping UK horticulture at the absolute forefront globally of sustainable crop productions, as well as innovative new solutions for crop production. I guess the advice that I'd give for someone looking to join a similar role to this would be that it is very important to understand both sides of the coin, as I mentioned earlier. So having an understanding on the ground of what it is growers want and need, and also having an understanding of the wants and needs of the manufacturing company, being able to understand both and how the product can try and meet in the middle and end up making everyone's life better and bringing value to everyone across the chain. So having some of that hands-on experience as well as the technical understanding is so important when you're both customer facing as well as having discussions with manufacturers and developing products. So in terms of the horticulture industry at the moment, I think it's an absolutely great time for young people and career switchers to get into the industry. We're starting to see a transition towards digital horticulture and horticulture 4.0. We're seeing a massive shift in the crops that are grown in the UK. I'm thinking things like medical marijuana, as well as the massive growth in the wine industry recently. We're seeing big shifts in how things are grown. So we're seeing more vertical farming, more autonomous farming. So it's really an interesting time to get involved. And that sort of, these new sectors alongside the old, more traditional horticultural sectors is meaning that in the horticulture sector, generally, you meet a really diverse range of people. You meet people in some of the new fields that are data scientists and computer programmers that have completely different life experiences and experiences to you, as well as meeting some of the people that, you know, farming and agriculture, horticulture is in their blood. All of them coming together to try and keep UK produce, be that ornamentals, soft fruit, veg or wine, all at the forefront in terms of quality and sustainable production on a global stage. So it's a really exciting time to get involved, and I hope this video has managed to communicate some of that excitement over to any of you guys that are thinking about taking up a career in horticulture. So thanks for listening. Cheers.
It's a real snapshot of a few kind of specific roles in the industry. What we're really trying to do at the moment at the RHS is kind of open up more opportunities for people to get some sort of practical kind of experience. You know, we're offering you know, things like taster sessions here at RHS Wisley, which are great opportunities for people to kind of come along, get a bit more information, and actually kind of get out and see kind of some of what we do. So if anyone's interested in that, I will share details of that with Claire after this session. We offer apprenticeships directly at the RHS. So we offer, I believe it's 4 this year. We're looking to see if we can expand that to one specifically in arboriculture. But those are, yeah, it's a very much sort of entry level. You don't have to have any experience or any previous kind of educational learning in horticulture. Those are entry level, and those start at just over sort of £20,000. They're a 2-year program, and that includes your kind of study and education, which I think is for us here at Wisley is down at Plumpton College. We have other apprenticeships. I think in total it's 10 across all of our gardens, but here at Wisley specifically